And during my lifetime, she would, write things, and, she would always have me read them. When I was about 10 or 11, she even entrusted me to type some of her stuff. But it had to be correct. It had to be totally correct. And I guess it helped me become a stickler for detail to a certain extent. But she is always writing. As I grew older, I'd be sitting in work and I'd get a call. I'd pick up the phone. Hi, how are you doing? Got a few minutes? I want to read something to you. For the most part, not too many of her things got published. She had a couple of like collage / poems that were in the Crisis magazine, which is the national magazine of the NAACP, and a few other things that were in various newspapers, here and there. But not a whole lot. But it was something she loved to do. One of the things that she would do, and she did this for many years, was she would write a poem for the holidays, and she would type it on paper, and then make copies of that. Then once she had the copies, she would take like watercolor and watercolor the paper. Then on the other side, she would take like Christmas wrapping paper and put it around the back, and then fold it over. And she had her own greeting card, which she would send to her friends and family, as opposed to the Hallmark cards. But at any rate, fast forwarding to say around November, her eyesight is failing. And so I would read some of her things to her. And so this particular, what became this book, had been sitting around there for quite a while. As I looked at her manuscript, it said copyright 1982. So it's been around for quite a while. I had never touched it. And the reason why I had never touched it was that my father was her second husband. And this book is largely about her life and experiences with her first husband. I didn't want to read about that other dude, so I never touched it. Knowing what it was about, but it was about him, so I didn't want to read anything about it. So back in November, and I'm reading her stuff to her, and so I picked it up. And it was, it was long. I said, oh, this is something she'll enjoy, and it'll take a little while to get into it. And so I read it for her. And after reading it, I thought, wow, this was pretty interesting. And then my second thought was, I wanted to kick myself, because this is my mother now at the age of 94 years old. Wow. As you might be able to guess, she does not have the memory that she had 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 32 years ago when she wrote this. And so some of the things that were discussed in there, I might have liked to get some amplification on. She no longer can give that. And her family members who might have been able to do that are dead, with the possible exception of one. So, there is a lot of history that is now in the grave, and in her case, in lost memory. So I was a little upset with myself for that. But as I said, this was November, December, and I said, well, instead of getting yet another scarf or something for Christmas, my Christmas present to you will be that I will see to publication of this book. And so here it is. So I thought that we'd do a little reading from it, and just so happens that I wrote the foreword. words. And although I have not seen the film, I'm to understand that the general premise is that Murphy's character has but 1,000 words left with which to express himself. Fortunately, that has not been the case in either a spoken or written capacity in the life of my mother, Winnie Williams. Were that to have been the case, she may have run out prior to her teenage years, given that she began writing on her 10th birthday. Or she may have run out in the midst of one of her recitations of James Weldon Johnson's The Creation, or at some point when she was on stage expressing herself through poetry, prose, or drama. But given that this was not the case, she has lived a life in which she has developed a love for the written word and a love of expressing herself through writing. Her writings virtually span her entire life and touch on many of the things that affected her on a personal level, as well as the local, national, and international events that affected the world at large. In a sense, a reading of her work presents somewhat of an autobiographical window into her life. Then, as time progressed, some of her younger family members took a look, so to speak, into that window and were inspired to express themselves in their own manner. And just as an athlete in a relay race will pass his or her baton on to the next runner, this can be seen as a symbolic passing of the torch from Winnie Williams on to the next generations. I hope that you enjoy this work, and if it should inspire you in the same manner, all the better. This next piece, which is the introduction, is something that this is a story. Here it is.
Thank you. This piece is called Bits and Pieces of I. Miss Ingrid Baker, her second period 10B English review lesson in sentence structure concluded, sat down at her desk, allowing us a 90-second break. She reached into her top left-hand drawer and took out a pile of papers, which she glanced at quickly, moving one here, another there. Then she placed them in a neat symmetrical stack in front of her. "All right, class, come to order." The quiet murmur, even the most boisterous among us spoke softly, and Mrs. Baker's room ceased immediately. "I have marked your composition papers. We will discuss them for the remainder of the period." She meant she would discuss them. I have put them in alphabetical order. She always did. Adams, Catherine, and Mary Aiken, and Joseph Aronowitz, then artist Winnie. "Winnie, you have a very good paper here, and I have given you a 95 on it." She paused, and for a full 5 minutes I was consumed with pleasure, for I had worked hard on this composition, and pride, for it was the highest rating Mrs. Baker had ever given anyone on a piece in the class of Section 1 students. They were all staring at me now, enviously I knew. I must surely have had a foolish grin on my face, reflecting this pride as Mrs. Baker continued in clear, deliberate tones. "It is obviously a professionally written piece. From what book or magazine did you copy it?" Unlike my classmates, my dark skin did not change color to reveal my embarrassment, but I stuttered in my shocked denial of this charge. "Mrs. Baker, I wrote it all by myself." "I'm quite certain you did not write this article, Winnie Artist, but since I don't know where you copied it from, I must give you nearly the mark the piece deserves. So we will say no more about it, but I am aware." She stared at me for another moment and then went on to the others' papers. But I heard no more of that period, conscious that I had been openly and inferentially loyal. Nor did I bring my mother up to school to defend my integrity and protest the public put down. I made nothing of it to others or to family, but I savored the implicit, if unintended, compliments, and was vastly encouraged to continue my secret writing in the notebook of Winnie Artist. Only much later did I come to realize that this was a piece of the pattern, the accepted device being the harsh treatment, the cold disparagement of black students, many of whom were counseled against going to college. Those who were not so counseled received no assistance or advice about schools or possible scholarships, and a majority of blacks dropped out during these late Depression years to no purpose.
To the school, to challenge that, because the insult never got addressed, and so everyone in the class walks away with the impression that she plagiarized, which she did not, and I didn't know whether she was too shy to do it, but when you think about that too was a sad thing about that.
But I love how Winnie claims that piece of her love for herself by saying her full name and her secret writing.
Yes. And
I just love that.
I like that she turned it into a positive, because she said that it was really a compliment. That the teacher said that, and of course the teacher didn't realize it, but to say that her writing was so good, she used that as a source of encouragement, rather than to totally be despaired about it and to discontinue writing. That was an encouragement to continue it.
And she
I'm
did
a writer.
with her secret writing.
Yes.
Wow.
It could have gone either way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You could have discouraged her to ever write anything good ever again.
Yeah.
The next piece is kind of like the first full chapter of the book, which is entitled The Vineland Venture. Shortly after high school, she married a gentleman, and who was shortly after after their marriage, he was kind of brought into the service and was away and this, that, and the other. At this point, she was stationed, he was stationed in North Carolina, and I guess the one thing I'll say is that she and her husband had kind of made a pact between them that she was going to try to follow him everywhere he would be stationed until he was taken to war. As long as he was stationed in the United States, she was going to try to just go with him to wherever that was. And so this is basically largely a detail of their travels and their experiences. So this particular piece took place in North Carolina.
The year was 1942. The place, Vineland, North Carolina.